Welcome guys, Jay is back here again with another video for the beloved PlayStation 2. This time around we're finding out a affordable plug and play HDMI solution. But if you haven't checked out my previous videos regarding the MX4 ISO simple plug and play hack pack that's compatible with basically all PlayStation 2 models, and how to run your PlayStation 1 backup titles on a PlayStation 2, you will find them in my playlist. In this video, we'll be looking at the most recent, most sold simple plug and play HDMI adapters. A lot of newer TVs these days won't even accept these original cables that originally came with, or even the low resolution that the PlayStation 2 outputs. So the goal here is to get a better understanding and simply getting your PlayStation 2 all hooked up to your HDTVs with results like this. First up to the battle is the popular one by Bitfunk. No distinctive title given, just a PS2 to HDMI converter, PS1/PS2, with an RGB YPBPR switch, in which I will go into more details with the difference very soon. It also states that it does have a 1080p resolution output. Some big words, doubt that is true, but very happy with this packaging, coming with a well presented multiple language manual with its own HDMI cable with those fancy Bitfunk straps and a micro USB cable to give that additional power needed. A shame that it's not USB-C, still with the old USB micro. The adapter is a bit on the bigger size with a rubber plastic connector with an aluminium shell. Very robust with a nice finish, a small LED indicator for power, and a very small YPBPR or RGB switch. Personally, let's keep this on the standard RGB mode for now. All in all, great quality built, but let's see what the video quality is like. The first thing I notice is that the brightness levels are pretty high, but it does help me explain to give you a better understanding on how getting a HDMI signal from the PlayStation 2 is like on a HDTV. So gamers, it's time to put your nerd specs on to help you hopefully understand a bit more on this matter, as I do know gamers have different preferences, and this is just my own opinion, and of course I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. But not to worry, this up and coming info on the nerd scale is a 4.5 out of 7, 7 being something from Digital Foundry. But if you just fancy finding out our top recommended adapters so far, I will just leave a timestamp below. So moving on. So unfortunately, with the nature of the video output of this console, you will not be able to get a full screen image. In most cases. That is because the complete video image output from a PlayStation 2 has an analog signal by nature. When connected to a digital TV, you see the total image resolution of 720 by 480, but the game render image is in 640 by 488, 60Hz, and having some titles by 512 by 448, 60Hz, just depending on a developer's preference, and that is only applying to NTSC consoles, which were mostly sold in Japan or American territories. But for PAL zones like in the EU and UK and Australia, the console's video output would have a render image of 640 by 512, 50Hz. And this was all due to, at the time release of the PlayStation 2 consoles, we all had these fat CRT TVs, and different regions of the world had different power supplies and connectors, so games released in the regions had to apply to work correctly. So even though the TVs in the PAL zones accepted a higher resolution, a lot of the PlayStation 2 titles were straight up given a letterbox effects just to mend the differences, which was just a bit lazy, as a lot of the titles were just developed in an NTS region like Japan or the US. So basically, due to the nature of title development at the time and how the PlayStation 2 handles its analog video output, we will be getting these different size borders for different titles around the rendered image. So with that understanding and nerd talk out of the way, this adapter showing an NTS signal with a standard RGB mode has the video image just slightly not central and the render image quite a way off. And that's not the worst part of it, but the colors seem to be very decent and there is no noticeable noise signal, with the audio levels very well balanced, but that brightness is where this fails. It is far too high, in which you could really notice in this scene with the white levels, and more so with my OPL MX4 ISO menu with my little pictures. Another bad note with this adapter, just around 20 minutes of use, it did come very uncomfortably pretty hot. And what I mentioned earlier, it does state that it's compatible with PlayStation 1 titles, in which the adapter will have to tap in to that 240p signal, which is a lower resolution again, or even some titles of PlayStation 1 could be 480i, just depending on the game. In which all the problems that I did show you just now for the PlayStation 2 games are all here for the PlayStation 1, and this is a recurring problem for the adapters that I'll be showing later. It did state as well it has a 1080p resolution, which is true, but of course this is only upscaling the resolution of its native output. Next up is another Bitfunk product. Now this one is a YPBPR mode output accepted only. So here I will go into more details about this video output mode. So let's get those nerd specs back on. Now this is compatible with every PlayStation 2 model, in which you could also access this feature via the original PlayStation 3 component cables. This adapter is already reminding me of those cheap and nasty ones that you should just stay away from. But now let's find out what this mode means. By standard, the PlayStation 2 is set to RGB mode, in which is compatible with the original fat CRT TVs. Now this mode you would have to first head to the PlayStation 2 configuration menu and change it to the component video out mode for this adapter to show on your TV in the first place, or even with the right colors. Now this is still an analog video signal that connections can be found on older HDTVs, so why would you have to have this mode set? Well, to put it simple, this will access the alternative video output, which gives you a higher resolution from the original RGB 480 interlace jump to a 480 progressive, or even some compatibility with 1080 interlace as well. What you are seeing now is footage captured with that first Bitfunk adapter that I shown earlier, as this gives you the option of selecting between both color modes. So to put it simple, this YPBPR mode enables you a cleaner, detailed, smoother image, in which we will need to get the best video output quality from your PlayStation 2 and just look a lot better on your HDTVs. So how does this alternative YPBPR video mode work? To put it simple, all the video information and rendered image from its standard 480 interlace is now being doubled, creating a full frame of a 480 progressive resolution. So instead, the picture being split into lines and shown on your screen, you now get a full frame of video information, giving you double the amount of video quality. Sounds great, right? Now with the original fat CRT TVs, you will not be able to access this feature unless you splashed out for some serious cash for one of these fancy PVM monitors. So now with this adapter, it taps into this YPBPR mode and converts it into a HDMI output. But another note to include on this is, unlike the other gaming consoles in this generation, the compatibility of games to have this 480p progressive mode is unfortunately quite low and only compatible with a handful of titles, as this feature would depend on the original game developers to include this as a compatible feature. And to add to the confusement, depends on where the game was released, either the PAL zones or NTSC. So when it comes to the PAL zones like UK and Europe, the compatibility list is a lot lower than the USA NTSC. But it does stay here in the UK, and the PAL zone Tekken 4 release does have this mode enabled. With this title to give you the option to choose this video mode, you will need to trigger it by holding down the X and triangle together as you turn on the console. And here it is, boom. So let's have a look at some gameplay footage. Already I've noticed that the brightness levels are quite turned down, but the color balance is pretty great, no noticeable noise, and the sound levels have been coming out just fine. Though that 4:3 ratio is well off, still needs some correction there. So let's compare this now with that first Bitfunk adapter, both set at YPBPR mode with 480p, and as you can see, the darkness levels on the left hand side is just too low and the brightness levels are just too high on the right hand side. As I mentioned earlier, with no RGB mode with this smaller Bitfunk adapter, and the design especially does not really work with that fat model stood up, as it does not really fit well. So this is just a no for both of these adapters for me. I did try and force an RGB mode with a smaller black Bitfunk adapter, and we just had some really bad problems. As well, with both of these adapters, they did not play well with my capture card, as the video output just caused some issues with their ratio again. Now that we got all that educational part of the video out of the way, we'll speed things up a bit here with the rest of these adapters, and well, just to put things a bit more simple. Next up is one from a company called Kaico, which is registered in the UK, so big up Britain. We don't see that too often. So I would say we've got some great packaging here, stating with its compatibility with resolutions from the PlayStation 1 and all regions of PlayStation 2. No upscaling is mentioned here, but it does have both the RGB and YPBPR mode compatible. Coming with a full coloured printed manual this time, but I would have to say it looks just like the Bitfunk packaging as well. And it does look and feel just like the smaller Bitfunk adapter with its aluminium shell, its small LED and that micro USB for power. And that colour mode switch is in the same place. I can't really tell you though which one came first, so who knows who copied who. So let's fire this up, and immediately I noticed that the ratio again is off, but there definitely is an improvement with that brightness levels being the best out of all three of these adapters at the moment. I hope that you can notice with a side-by-side comparison with that small black Bitfunk adapter. Everything else is running great from the color levels and an improved brightness level, but still is a little too dark for me. I did go ahead and test the standard RGB for ATI mode, and there were some terrible interlacing line problems, simply just unplayable. It wasn't too long until I noticed that the build quality of the adapter was pretty shocking. I may have had just some personal manufacturing bad luck, but this is the first time this has happened for me. So again, for this adapter, it's just a no. Quickly onto our next adapter, we have the wizardry. Great name, I love it. On the back it already has a uninsuring message stating that this may not be compatible with some HDMI sources. A great start. But this is a first, stating that it has priority support with a year-free warranty, with support over the pond in the US. But what intrigued me is that the support and distribution is backed up by a very local company. Big up the capital. So what do we get altogether? We have a HDMI cable, the adapter itself, a thank you note, and a small manual with a micro C cable for power. Yes, finally a micro C. This again is another first for me to experience, and it's about time. I have never seen reviews for this cable, but I really was intrigued with this unique design. Yes, we do have HDMI inputs as well, but the setup still looks like the usual case. Let's take a closer look. We have a pretty lengthy connector cable, which personally I do prefer, more in the favour of cancelling any noise interference. We got our HDMI inputs 2 and 3, taking that the PS2 must be the input 1, and the USB-C power. Generally impressed with its built design with clear labels and LED indication. But how does this perform? And oh dear, it's looking pretty terrible. Let's test out the YPBPR mode, in which it kind of does nothing, but weirdly enough we still got a picture. Let's try a different resolution using OPL, and still it's looking pretty shocking. Let's give it a 480p test, and nothing. So it's just about has a RGB mode supported. Let's test out those 720p and 1080p upscaling switch, and the picture is registering with that resolution, but of course there is zero improvement. Well, let's just see if this is any good for a multi HDMI source adapter, with plugging in this awesome Dreamcast, which has a much easier video output to get great quality out of, and bam, it is looking pretty awesome. But before you ask, unfortunately, it does have a straight video output, so there's no added upscaling here. For this final part of the video, I'll be showing you two recommended simple plug and play HDMI adapters, which have proved to be my personal favorite so far. This Levelhike one I reviewed in the past and have stuck in my personal setup ever since. I believe that this one is great for people that want a simple HDMI fix and simply still use your discs, and do not want to go down that 480p alternative color mode route. So this does come with a 1-year warranty that has a solid basic plastic built with a very welcoming 4x3 and 16:9 widescreen switch to help fill up your TV. Also has a small LED indicator for power with a pretty decent connector length to your console. It does state that it's not compatible with the component YPBPR mode. We've got our micro USB, unfortunately no micro C here, and we have a HDMI output, which we are able to plug in any further additional upscalers, in which I will mention more on that very soon. So let's fire this one up and set it back to that standard RGB. If you are using OPL, I believe that the best video output mode to get a nice dashboard is NTSC 704x480i. So already, if you have noticed, we got a pretty decent picture, especially as it is in RGB. This is because it is tapping into the RGB video signal coming out, which is a higher analog signal that is then converted to HDMI. The ratio isn't a solid 4:3, unfortunately, but it is the best that we've had so far. So let's switch it to that 16:9 mode, which simply does stretch the image. Even though that this game is rendered in a 4:3, it's not really suitable, but it does work well with games that have that widescreen option, or even if you have widescreen patch your games yourself with some mods. Now the black and whites and colours are a lot better balanced here, but the reds do come out a little bit harsh, especially with the fonts, but this is a very minor issue. When comparing this now with that first original Bitfunk adapter, you can really tell the difference. For example, have a closer look at the aiming cursor. It is more of a circle with that Levelhike, the way it should be. We have no interlacing tearing, just a smooth image and very low or next to none noise interference. This adapter does output with a 720p upscale, which I find does work pretty well, even more so with PlayStation 1 games. And yes, you can use this same adapter with the original PlayStation and the PlayStation 1 Slim model. Again, here's a quick view of comparison with PlayStation 1 titles against that original Bitfunk adapter. If you do intend to use an adapter that is compatible with that component 480p, this Levelhike one will do a great job for your PlayStation 1. Last but not least, we got another Bitfunk adapter in which has a smaller design. Again, the name has a generic title, which can cause confusion for customers, but purchasing from a supplier that has direct communication with the manufacturer can reassure the customer to get the better version. And of course, you will find a link in the description box below. So of course the packaging is top notch and neat with those tidy Bitfunk cable straps, supporting both the RGB 480i and 480p modes with PS1 support and multiple region resolution support. Oh, and the same micro USB. Come on now, we need that C. Let's hook this up now to a standard RGB mode, and unfortunately we have those interlacing problems. Not as bad as the previous adapters I've shown, but they are there and it is more clear through gameplay. But here with the YPBPR mode with 480p, this is where the adapter shines with fluid visual movement next to no noise and a great color balance. The audio levels are doing fine as well. But that 4:3 screen ratio is still not perfect, but the rendered image is centralized, making this adapter the best so far. But of course it does have its problems, here with the low dark levels and the brightness being too low. But the benefits of them being too low, we can always boost them up on your TV settings. If they were too bright, they would just make the problem worse. So the ending results of this video with the battle of the PlayStation 2 HDMI adapters, I have personally found that the Levelhike does support the PlayStation 1 and the standard RGB mode to be the best, with the later smaller Bitfunk revision to be the best of supporting the 480p mode. Wouldn't it be great if somehow these two companies can merge together to make us the ultimate adapter? But if you are interested in only using this 480p mode to get us the best video output with this MX4 ISO mod pack, which of course you will find purchase links below, you can utilize the OPL to force unsupported games with 480p, making the compatibility a lot higher. And then to add the cherry on top, you can connect your M Classic to the output to then upscale it to 1440p with added anti-aliasing. Then lastly, you could adjust your input video settings on your TV with higher black levels and exposure, with some screen stretching to give you some gameplay that originally looked like this over to looking like this, which I'm sure you would want to dig up that PlayStation 2 and blow off the dust, especially with widescreen games looking like this as well. But lastly, I know you can get these HDMI installation kits that do cost quite a bit and do require some soldering skills, which is beyond me, but hopefully I will love to test that one day. Oh, and just to ensure you guys that I am aware of these analog to HDMI video converter boxes that are on the more expensive side and do require additional setting up, cables and some tweaking, but we're just here for some simple plug and play. Maybe soon down the line, when they are more affordable and setup friendly, I'll be happy to check them out, but that's just my opinion and I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. And together, perhaps we'll be able to get the best experience on how to get your PlayStation 2 set up on a modern TV. So as always, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, hit that button, and if you want to support this content, click subscribe, leave your comments below, and I'll catch you a lot on my next video.